Why is it always me? That question echoed in her mind, louder than the slamming door, sharper than the words her father just spat across the room. The living room was silent now, eerily so, except for the rapid beating of her heart, and the soft hum of a clock ticking toward a future that no longer felt like hers. He didn't even flinch when he said it. "You've never brought anything good to this family." Not a crack in his voice. Not a flicker of regret. And her mother. She just stood there, arms crossed, lips pursed, like silence was some form of loyalty. No one came to her defense. Not Ethan. Not Lily. Not a single soul in the house she once called home. So when her father told her to leave, it wasn't a command. It was a sentence. But here's the real question: what happens to the girl no one believed in? Once she decides she doesn't need them anymore. Don't look away. The real story starts now. Why is it always me? The question pounded in Ivy's chest like a drum as she stood in the middle of the Quinn dining room, her business pitch still clenched in her trembling hands, 50 pages of strategy, design, growth projections, and pure hope. Her father didn't even glance at it. James Quinn leaned back in his leather chair, eyes locked on his daughter like she was some stranger who'd wandered into the wrong house. His fingers tapped impatiently on the polished oak table, slow and deliberate, the sound echoing louder than his words. "You think this thing," he waved a dismissive hand at her pitch, "is worth our time? Ivy, this isn't a business. It's a phase. Like that photography nonsense. Or the vegan blog. Or whatever else you've wasted your time on. This isn't a phase," Ivy said, trying to steady her voice. "I've been working on this for over a year. I have over 3,000 monthly visitors. I'm generating sales. I'm building something that matters." James laughed, low and bitter. "Sales? How much are we talking? Enough to buy groceries, pay rent, help this family?" Her cheeks flushed hot. "I'm getting there. I'm doing it all on my own. That's the problem, Ivy. You keep chasing these fantasies like the world owes you something. Meanwhile, Ethan is out there building a real career. Lily's winning awards. And you're making candles and posting about them on Instagram." The words hit like bullets, one after another. Across the table, Ethan sipped his wine, avoiding eye contact. Lily didn't even look up from her phone. Margaret sat at the head of the table, spine stiff, hands folded neatly in her lap, her silence heavier than James's voice. Ivy turned to her mother. "Mom? Seriously? You're just going to sit there?" Margaret blinked slowly. "Your father has a point." Something inside Ivy cracked. "You've never supported me. Not once. Not when I stayed up all night researching suppliers, not when I got my first bulk order, not even when I made my first $1,000. You all treat me like I'm some embarrassment." "Because you are," James snapped, rising from his chair. "You are a walking disappointment, Ivy. Every time you try something new, I think maybe this is it. Maybe she'll finally do something worthwhile. And every time, you prove me wrong." Ivy's lips trembled. "That's not fair. I work hard, harder than you know. You don't even ask. You never cared. Because it's not real." James roared, slamming his fist against the table. The plates rattled. Lily flinched. Ethan looked away. "You've never brought anything good to this family. Not once. You take. You argue. You fail. And then you expect us to clap for your growth. We're done." The room fell deadly quiet. Ivy could barely breathe. Her eyes searched the room, desperate, wild, pleading, for someone, anyone, to say something. So that's it, she whispered. You're cutting me off. We're asking you to leave, James said coldly. If you want to live like an adult, then start acting like one. Find your own place. Pay your own bills. Because we won't support this foolishness any longer. Margaret remained stone. It's for the best. Ivy looked at Ethan. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Lily smirked, just a little. Like it was all a show, and she was the audience. Her vision blurred, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not for them. You know what? Fine, she said, her voice low and shaking. You don't want me here. I'll go. But don't ever, ever, pretend you were a family to me. She turned on her heel and stormed down the hall. Her footsteps echoed through the house like gunshots. In her room, she grabbed a suitcase, stuffed it with whatever she could reach, clothes, charger, laptop, the sketchbook she'd started her brand ideas in. She left behind framed photos, trophies from childhood, the sweatshirt her mom gave her when she was 12. When she stepped outside, it was raining. No one followed her. No one stopped her. The front door clicked shut behind her like the final nail in a coffin. Out in the storm, Ivy Quinn finally understood what it meant to be alone. The street was nearly empty when Ivy stepped off the bus. Just her, a soaked suitcase, and $23 in her checking account. Her phone buzzed low in her pocket, 1:13 a.m., battery at 6%. She stood under the flickering awning of a closed corner store, the cold seeping into her bones. And for a second, she almost turned around. But there was nowhere to go back to. Jenna Brooks opened the door in pajama pants and an oversized hoodie, hair tied in a messy bun. She didn't ask questions. Didn't demand an explanation. She just stepped aside and pulled Ivy into a hug. Stay as long as you want, Jenna whispered. No rent, no rules. Just breathe, okay? Ivy collapsed onto the lumpy couch in Jenna's living room, her suitcase beside her like a shield. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, her chest aching with the weight of 100 unsaid words. She had never felt smaller. The next morning, reality hit like a punch to the throat. Ivy sat at Jenna's kitchen table, staring at her laptop screen. Her inbox was empty. No new orders. Website traffic had dropped. Bills were due. Her car insurance had lapsed. Her phone service would be cut in 4 days. I can help with groceries, Jenna offered gently, placing a coffee mug in front of her. But you need something steady. At least for now. So Ivy started looking. She applied for everything. Fast food, retail, receptionist jobs, anything. She walked into cafes with resumes printed on cheap paper. She waited in lobbies. Smiled until her cheeks hurt. Wrote cover letters until 3 a.m. And still, the phone didn't ring. Eventually, she found gigs. Freelance copywriting for $5 an hour. Organizing closets for women in East Nashville. Hand painting signs for a wedding she wasn't invited to. Cleaning Airbnb bathrooms with industrial gloves and podcasts blaring in her ears to keep her from crying. She slept on the couch. $8 ramen. Shared Wi-Fi with the neighbors. And every night, before falling asleep, she whispered the same question to herself. Was Dad right? But every morning, she opened her laptop again. Her online shop, Wick Willow, had been on life support. Orders trickled in, maybe 2 or 3 a week. But she clung to it like a lifeline. She knew there was something there. Something real. So she treated it like war. She redesigned the branding. Took product photos on Jenna's balcony using a white bedsheet and natural light. Studied analytics like they were sacred texts. Watched marketing webinars until her eyes burned. Taught herself how to run ads, how to write copy that made people feel. She experimented. Failed. Tried again. Sometimes she'd go to the post office with a single package and stand in line behind business owners shipping out dozens, pretending not to feel ashamed. But then something shifted. A Nashville lifestyle blogger bought a candle, Sage Citra Serenity, and posted about it on Instagram. Within hours, Ivy's phone buzzed non-stop. Do you ship internationally? Restock sandalwood ember, please. Got my candle today. I'm obsessed. The site crashed. Jenna screamed from the kitchen. Ivy cried, ugly, uncontrollable sobs, as she printed shipping labels and scrambled to reorder supplies with a trembling hand. She didn't sleep for 3 days. But she wasn't surviving anymore. She was building. 6 months later, she stood in the middle of her new apartment, barefoot on polished wood floors, staring out at the Nashville skyline through 12-foot windows. Her own place. Her own furniture. Her own name on the lease. Her bank account had 5 figures. Her brand had a following. People she'd never met called her inspiring. And sometimes, when she saw her reflection in the mirror, hair tied back, candle wax on her sleeve, eyes fierce and tired and alive, she almost didn't recognize herself. This version of Ivy didn't beg for approval. She didn't shrink. She owned her story. Until one afternoon, as she was wrapping a bulk order for a boutique in Atlanta, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then came the message. Ivy, we need to talk. Dad. A minute later, another one. It's Mom. Please, it's important. Call us. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then Ethan. Things are bad at home. Dad lost his job. We need your help. Ivy stared at the screen, heartbeat slowing. The wax in her hands hardened. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small. She felt in control. It had been 3 years. 3 years since she walked out that door with nothing but a suitcase and a stomach full of shame. 3 years of silence. No birthdays. No holidays. No how are you? Messages. Nothing. And now, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Nashville area code. Ivy, we need to talk. Dad. Ivy stared at the message, heart suddenly still. It felt like seeing a ghost. No emotion. No apology. Just that. She locked the screen without replying. 2 days passed. Then another message, this time, more fragile. More unfamiliar. It's Mom. Please call. It's important. Margaret. Ivy's breath caught in her chest. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she didn't respond. She didn't owe them anything. The next morning, her phone rang. It buzzed once, then stopped. She let it go to voicemail. Minutes later, another call. This time, a voicemail came through. She stared at it for a long time, before finally pressing play. Ivy. It's Mom. The voice on the other end didn't sound like Margaret Quinn, the cold, composed woman who had watched her daughter be thrown out without flinching. Your father lost his job 2 months ago. The company folded. He didn't tell anyone. We tried to manage, but the mortgage. Her voice cracked. The bank's going to take the house. We're behind on everything. We don't know what to do anymore. A pause. Then, barely audible. Please. We need you. The voicemail ended. The silence that followed felt deafening. Ivy didn't cry. She didn't move. She sat on her velvet couch, in her sunlit apartment, bigger, warmer, hers, with a mug of coffee growing cold in her hands. They needed her. The people who once told her she was worthless. Who laughed at her dream. Who threw her out like she was garbage. Now? They wanted her back. Not out of love. Not out of regret. Out of need. Another message lit up her screen. They are not saying it, but they are scared. Ethan. Dad can't find work. Mom's been crying in the kitchen. Ivy. The bank sent a notice. If they don't pay something in 30 days, they'll lose everything. Ivy stared at the message, a bitter taste rising in her throat. Where was this energy 3 years ago? Where was this voice when she begged for someone to stand up for her? She tossed her phone onto the couch and stood, pacing the room. Memories crashed over her like waves. Her father's voice, cold and sharp. Her mother's silence. Ethan's eyes avoiding hers. The door slamming shut behind her, sealing her fate. Now they want my help. Now they remember I exist. She stared out the window, watching the sun dip below the skyline, the city glowing gold and orange and indifferent. Inside her, a war was raging. Part of her wanted to laugh. To let them feel what she had felt. The loneliness. The fear. The helplessness. Another part of her. Still hurt. Still longed to be seen. Not needed. Seen. That night, Ivy didn't sleep. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and the faint buzz of traffic below. She thought of her mother's trembling voice. The shame behind Ethan's words. And then she thought of the girl who slept on a couch, with nothing but hope and a half-dead dream. She remembered what it felt like to be powerless. Now? The power was hers. But what would she do with it? The oak vine was not the kind of place you showed up to in borrowed clothes and hollow pride, but that's exactly what the Quinn family did. The maître d' raised an eyebrow when he saw them, James in an old blazer that didn't quite fit, Margaret with her pearls slightly askew, Ethan looking like he hadn't slept in days. Lily wasn't there. They followed him through the dimly lit dining room, past tables draped in white linen, couples sipping $100 wine, violins humming softly overhead, to a private corner booth. They sat down stiffly, awkwardly, like guests at a funeral. Then the doors opened again. And Ivy walked in. Red heels. Black blazer. Hair pulled back. Confidence wrapped around her like a second skin. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She didn't rush. She owned the moment. James looked up first, stunned silent. Margaret's lips parted, a flicker of emotion behind her eyes. Was it guilt? Relief? Something colder? Ethan blinked slowly, shifting in his seat. Ivy stopped at the table, took a breath, then pulled out the chair across from them. You asked for a meeting, she said, voice cool, composed. I picked the venue. Hope that's all right. No one answered. The silence was heavy. Almost sacred. Saturday. A waiter appeared like clockwork. Can I get you started with? Still water, Ivy said. For everyone. She didn't ask. She ordered. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then James cleared his throat. Ivy. We appreciate you meeting with us. Do you? She tilted her head slightly. Because the last time we spoke, you said I was a disappointment. That I'd never brought anything good to this family. James's jaw tightened. Margaret looked away. That was harsh, Ethan offered, weakly. Things were different then. No, Ivy cut in. They weren't. You just had the upper hand. Silence again. Look, James finally said, his tone trying for something softer, but still laced with control, we're in a difficult spot. The house. You're going to lose it, she interrupted, folding her hands on the table. You've already defaulted on the mortgage. The bank's prepared to foreclose. Margaret flinched. Ethan dropped his gaze. James bristled. We didn't come here to be humiliated. Ivy leaned forward, voice sharp. Did I ask to be humiliated the night you threw me out? Did I deserve silence while you all watched me fall apart? No answer. You didn't just break me, Dad. You erased me. And now you want to pretend none of it happened. James looked like he wanted to explode, but he didn't. Not here. Not anymore. Margaret finally spoke. Ivy. Please. We didn't know things would turn out this way. Ivy nodded slowly. Neither did I. But I survived. On a couch. With 2 jobs. Building a business from scraps. You told me I'd never make it. You wanted me to fail. James opened his mouth. She raised a hand. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to talk business. They stared at her. She reached into her bag, pulled out a slim folder, and placed it on the table. I'll buy the house, she said. Margaret's breath caught. Ethan sat up. James's hands clenched into fists. You can stay in it. All of you. But you'll pay rent. Market rate. Monthly. No discounts. No favors. James's face turned red. You think you can come in here and... I know I can, she said coldly. Because you need me. And I don't need any of you. The room went still. A violin note hung in the air above them. You can sign the papers tomorrow, she continued. I've already had my lawyer draw up the contract. If you refuse, the house goes under. The bank takes it. You walk away with nothing. Margaret whispered, why would you do this? After everything. Ivy looked her mother straight in the eye. Because I remember what it felt like to be powerless. They didn't respond. Not right away. Ivy stood, gathered her things. You have 24 hours. After that, the offer disappears. She turned, heels clicking against marble as she walked away. And for the first time in her life, she didn't look back. The next day, a courier arrived at her office. Inside the envelope, 3 signatures. It had been a week since the documents were signed. The house was officially hers. James didn't say a word when the papers were delivered. Margaret signed in silence. Ethan looked at Ivy with something that hovered between shame and awe. And just like that, the house that once cast her out now had her name on the deed. But closure didn't come. Ivy kept waiting for it. For the weight to lift. For the anger to settle. It didn't. Until the message came. It was a Tuesday morning. She was sitting in her office, candle wax simmering in the test molds, emails piling up, her second cup of coffee already cold, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. Do you know who helped you get your first 50 orders? No greeting. No name. Just that. Ivy frowned, thumbs tapping quickly. Who is this? A pause. Then. Someone who used to pack boxes for you. Back when you were still shipping from Jenna's apartment. Her heart skipped. What are you talking about? This time, the answer came with a name she hadn't heard in a long time. Ask Alan Grant. Her blood ran cold. Alan Grant. The early investor, who had placed a large wholesale order that jump-started her inventory system. The man who had emailed her out of nowhere with interest in carrying Wick Willow in his boutique chain. She had assumed it was fate. Luck. Her first big break. But now. She picked up her phone and dialed his number, hands trembling. Alan. This is Ivy Quinn. Ivy. Hey, what a surprise. Everything okay? I need to ask you something. And I need the truth. Of course. She took a breath. How did you find me? 3 years ago. You said you discovered my brand through an Instagram post, but that doesn't feel true anymore. Silence. Then, your mother called me. Ivy froze. She used to be friends with my wife. Margaret told me you were talented. That you just needed one person to believe in you. She called you. Yes. She told me not to mention her. Said you had to feel like it was all yours, or it wouldn't mean anything. And she was right. Her heart thundered in her chest. Did my dad know? James was the one who connected me to your shop in the first place. He sent me the first batch of product photos you posted. Said he couldn't say it to your face, but he was proud. Fiercely. Just didn't know how to show it. Ivy sank into her chair, mouth dry. He also called a few friends of his, former colleagues. Told them to place orders under different names. Just to get your numbers up. No, she whispered. Yes. They didn't want you to fail, Ivy. But they knew if they told you, it would break something in you. So they stayed silent. Even when it killed them. Tears blurred her vision. They let me believe I was alone. Sometimes, Alan said gently, the hardest way to love someone is to step back and let them suffer. Because it's the only way they learn to stand. She hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Her whole world tilted sideways. The cruelty hadn't been cruelty. The silence hadn't been abandonment. It had been sacrifice. They had watched her fall, knowing they could catch her, but choosing not to. Because they believed she could rise. Because they needed her to. And she had. That night, Ivy drove to the old house. She parked across the street, watching the warm lights flicker inside. James was in the front room, seated in the armchair, where he once read the news with quiet authority. He looked older now. Smaller. Margaret passed by the window, carrying a tray of tea. Her posture was still perfect. But her movements were slower. Ivy gripped the steering wheel, her heart aching with something she couldn't quite name. Love? Grief? Forgiveness? She didn't knock. Not yet. But for the first time. She wanted to. It was raining again. Not the kind of storm that shook windows or flooded streets, but a quiet, steady rain. The kind that made everything feel slower. Softer. Honest. Ivy sat in her car, across the street from the house she once called a cage. Wipers brushed away the water like a metronome, steady and patient, while her heart raced wildly. She hadn't planned to come. Not really. But some invisible thread had pulled her here. A part of her that still needed closure. Not from contracts. Not from power. From them. She stepped out slowly, umbrella tucked under one arm, her boots sinking slightly into the wet gravel. The porch light was on. It cast a warm, golden hue against the dark wood of the door, like it had been waiting. She knocked once. Then again. The door opened. James stood in the frame. For a second, neither of them moved. He looked smaller. Not just older, but worn. Like life had taken more from him than he was willing to admit. His once firm posture had bent slightly. His eyes, once sharp with judgment, were now dulled with something quieter. Regret? Or just age? Ivy, he said softly. She stared at him. And something inside her cracked. Her breath caught. Tears spilled silently, trailing down her cheeks. She stepped forward, slowly, like approaching something sacred, and before she could stop herself, she dropped to her knees in front of him. I was wrong, she whispered through the sobs. I thought you didn't love me. I thought you wanted me gone. But I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. James looked down at her, his mouth trembling. I blamed you, Ivy continued, her voice shaking. And you were just trying to make me stronger. I didn't understand. I didn't want to. And I'm so sorry. She wrapped her arms around him, tight, desperate, like she was trying to hold together everything that had broken between them. And then his arms moved. Slowly. Hesitantly. And he held her. Not like a man who had won. Not like a father proving a point. But like a dad who had waited too long to hold his little girl again. Margaret stood in the hallway, one hand gripping the banister, the other covering her mouth. Ivy looked up through blurry eyes. Margaret's face crumbled. And for the first time in Ivy's entire life, she saw her mother cry. Not a single tear, or a stoic wipe of the cheek. Full, raw sobs. She rushed forward, kneeling beside them, wrapping her arms around them both. I never stopped loving you, she whispered into Ivy's hair. Not for a second. And Ivy just held on tighter. Later that night, they sat around the old dining table. No one mentioned the past. No one needed to. James poured tea with shaking hands. Margaret placed warm biscuits on a plate. Ethan joined them eventually, bringing an awkward bottle of wine and a quiet smile. Ivy looked around the room, at the peeling wallpaper, the mismatched chairs, the people she once thought were strangers. They were still flawed. Still fractured. But for the first time, they felt like home. She didn't forget what had happened. She didn't erase the pain. But she chose to forgive. Not for them. For herself. Because Ivy Quinn hadn't just found success. She had found her family again. And this time, she wasn't leaving. Not every love story begins with warmth. Not every family finds its way without breaking first. Sometimes, love doesn't sound like I'm proud of you. It sounds like silence. Like disappointment. Like a slammed door. But beneath the coldness, beneath the mistakes, the harsh words, the distance, there can still be love. Real. Raw. Unspoken. Ivy learned that success isn't just about rising alone. It's about reaching back. About choosing forgiveness when bitterness would be easier. It's about standing tall, not to say I don't need you, but to say I made it. And I'm still willing to let you in. Because strength isn't measured by how far you run from your pain. It's measured by how bravely you return to it. And choose healing instead. The truth is, love isn't always gentle. Sometimes, it comes dressed as fire. Success means little if it costs your heart. And forgiveness isn't weakness, it's what sets you free.